and happy Easter.
Hello.
So, okay, Jesus. Jesus was prophesied in the Old Testament like so many times by so many prophets that he was going to come and he was going to, be this great ruler and save everybody. And zoom forward to New Testament times, everybody's super excited, he's going to come. And then Christmas, he comes, And so he grows up, he starts doing his ministry, he gets his disciples, and the disciples are super hyped, like, we're with the Messiah. We're going to be the right hand of him and rule over the entire world. Because they figured it was, kind of this world kind of thing going on. And then, they've seen him, they had every reason to believe he was the Messiah. They'd seen him cast out demons of people that had been tortured for years. They'd seen him heal people of sicknesses, people that had been crippled since birth, Like, can you imagine being able to see that? How could you doubt him? And then, suddenly, he dies. He gets killed. And they had to go through 3 days of believing that he was dead without any hope. What would they be feeling? Like, I've never thought about the time that they had. Like, just imagine this church service. It's like, what, an hour and a half? That's an hour and a half, and it seems pretty long, but can you imagine? It's wonderful. But can you imagine just going through an hour and a half of thinking that everything you put your life into was gone? What would you do? I know in my life I've seen God do absolutely incredible things, like things that were impossible. I totally labeled them impossible, put them on the shelf, and then God takes them off the shelf, says, actually I can do that, And but it seems that every single time a new impossible thing, a new impossible situation comes up, I'm back to being like, oh, that's impossible. And I keep forgetting the amazing thing that God has done. And it just feels like, I droop, and it's like, how could God give me a promise and then let me watch it die? Like, that's just cruel. It would be better to have just never given it to me at all and just let me have stayed the way it was and not have that hope and watch it die. But Easter is the perfect time to see that dreams really can be dead. They can be dead. Jesus was dead. There's no life in him. But that does not mean that God is boxed in. It means that he came and he rose Jesus up to say, look, death is the end all of everything, but I can even defeat that. If I can defeat that, what can't I do? He proved it to us. So now, flip it around and say, if God had just kept the promise away and kept the pain of watching it die out of my life, I never would have had that intense joy of watching it come back. That's the beauty of it. Yes, it did die. Yes, you did have to go through a lot of pain during that time. But when it came back, it's even better than it ever could have been if it had just been, oh, here's promise. Oh, there it went. It happened. Yay. So in Gospels, there's a lot of different details over the resurrection. Like, some of them are different, but because, it's a bunch of different people telling it, people have different perspectives and remember things differently. But one thing that's always in there is joy. Joy over Jesus coming back. In Luke 24:52 through 53, it says, then they worshipped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy, and they stayed continuously at the temple praising God. To be able to stay continuously at the temple requires an intense joy. That means that they really knew it, they believed it, they had that, and they were so happy. That's what joy does in our life. We can't not praise. So if you're in a 3-day period, or feeling like those promises are just not going to happen, look in the Bible. That's how Jesus tends to work. With Joseph, he gave him this dream saying, hey, you're going to be king. And then he gets thrown into slavery and beaten up and put in jail and waiting. And it finally happens. And how much better off was he from having all that happen to him? He was grown in his character. He was able to know that God was with him, And same with David. He was crowned king, and then he went back to being a little shepherd, and then he got chased by Saul for his life and was going to die. And all of these people, just look in the Bible and it's always there. So if you're feeling like you have a promise that's dead, it really might be dead right now. That doesn't mean anything. Look at Easter.
Amen.